Hey there. Oh, yeah, I watched Philip DeFranco's video today. It's late at night, clearly. It's sort of a thing. Anyways, yeah, no, Nobel Prize laureate, whatever, I don't really care. That's not really going to matter to me. And it shouldn't really, honestly, to anyone that's actually kind of somewhat interested in it, right? Like, they're just normal people, bro. Like, be careful on that one, you know? Right? But, like, also, hey, all right. We know about the start from the center, work your way out problem, right? Like, or approach really to solving problems. So it's like, look, you have an Oort cloud, right? You know about the gravitational well, all right, that we're in, that changes entropically a lot of quantum and astrophysics phenomenon. We already know that it compresses space and time and it shifts towards us. We already know that there's a light pressure, neutron pressure as well that starts to distort and disturb light coming towards us. We already know that ultimately speaking, a large amount of electromagnetic frequencies, meaning from the planets and them orbiting and all the dust and debris that starts happening, gets involved in that. We also know that that constantly moves and shifts, and there's little easier to go through and less easy to go through, and we try our best to plot those things, right? 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 We don't. No. We don't. Not at all. But to be fair, that's something we need to do. Fact of the matter is, and like that gives us a better understanding the moment we get to the Oort cloud, which in its own right is going to have a large amount of aurora borealis like effects of charged particles, right? Because we were going to produce our own electromagnetic field, and we kind of need to know how far that stretches out anyway. So we need to send a probe there to begin with, and rocket balloons were how we started off in our own, for what it's worth, atmosphere on Earth, right? Launched up, we started seeing that we had an electromagnetic field that propagated outwards, and started seeing that there are all these things. Some of you are old enough to know when that happened. Some of you are not. I'm one of those not people, I just know of it. Right? So, what I'll tell you is, Cool Reese, Cool Friedman, doesn't change any of those things. You gotta do it. You know that there's different occlusion, so I just call them vacuum, empty spots, for neutrons. Like, as they channel their way through, they create a flowing fluid through all of our different galaxies and planets and stars, right? We know that as they approach a star, that they start getting bent in. Neutrons are our best bet, but it's hard to know how fast and along the path of travel, how much slower or sped up, and the real distance, thanks to compression of space and time there, it really did travel. Especially since if a Big Bang did happen, we would still have neutrons from that, along with neutrinos. Are they lighter or are they heavier? Do they have more density? Do they have less density? Can we detect them versus others? Well, we can't even replicate them. We don't even know. So, no, we don't have the ability to do that, right? So instead of the best bet, that would give us a better understanding, as of course it's easier to plot a graph of a neutron through, all of that. Imagine a bunch of balls with empty spaces and a smaller one goes through all the way to landing on your little detector, right? Well, photons. Photons are what you're going to have to do that with. We have more than enough knowledge at this point to pinpoint all of those different little spots. We know about charge fields, we know about electromagnetic fields, right? We know about strong nuclear forces too that can start happening. We know about how much plasma, so interstellar really is kind of how that looks like to me, even though it's ionic at that point. But we know about magnetic filaments and fields that travel for light years too now. We also know about static charge differences that are also that large as well. We know that affects luminosity. We know that affects wave frequency, and we know how much constructive and destructive interference also does the same thing, especially with lensing. You have to plot that from Earth on out. But you've not been doing that at all. And you need to do that. If you really want to start this argument, all of you are going to look like egg on face people to anyone that has any somewhat, and I'm just an enthusiast, level of knowledge, which should show you something. It looks silly to all the people that are trying to look up to you as inspiration to try and get into astrophysics. You can do better than this. Stop becoming a tortoise and hare who argue, and then the whole idea is, well, if only the impulse control and impetuous nature of this rabbit was such that they controlled themselves and they would have won the race. And, oh yes, but you see, constant progress over time of the tortoise, or the turtle, is what won. But it's like, no, you got it wrong. You were both arguing. You live well and truly past what that stupid rabbit will. You should have gotten them ultimately to understand a little bit more of your wisdom and experience. They're gonna die, it wouldn't matter anyways. That fucker means nothing, and he never even thought, like, hey, how can I use my speed to help you? Nope. Completely whiffed everyone that fable, the allegorical symbolic nature of what it really meant. You know? It's like, look at you argue for no reason. Why? You know what I mean? You know what you must do. You do. You know that. It's just hard work. And it's like, yeah, huh? Get together and do it. Yeah, I don't care. Seek out that little telescoping, little fucking gravitational lens thing and plot every stupid little thing for the furthest distance later. The only way you get to that one is if you can plot in your local area all the constructive and destructive gravitational lens waves, all the destructive and constructive light waves, the frequencies they're in, the, of course, compressed space and time they're in, the change, the direction, the ultimate interference pathway diverting and diffusing off light, obviously, giving you a almost hallucinogenic holographic like mirage that you're looking at. You know, a twinkling star, if you will, that doesn't seem to be there. Yeah, lens. I mean, of course, we only know so far, at least, I guess, that it might, because it's been posited, decay eventually. We don't know if it does. What if it does? What if it doesn't? So it curved that hard. Yeah, well, so what? That amount of time? It will do that. We know that. Space and time doesn't give a shit about you, basically. You got more than enough gravity. You got more than enough black holes to fucking do that shit. You gotta remember those parts of, well, I mean, you're an astrophysicist, right? So it's not like you don't know. Like, this is for those fuckers, really, that want to argue for you, the stands in your crowd, basically. The dummies that think that you don't know. You know, like, hey, I'm gonna get him. Stupid people, basically. But it's like, it's through their own fault after a while. They know. You know? Like, everything he's saying makes sense, but I don't like it. And I don't like him. Whoopie-doo. Light doesn't do that. Light doesn't constructively interfere. Light doesn't destructively interfere. There are no electron beams that form along these ionic channels of magnetic filaments that got aligned thanks to these hydrogen or iron or other particles traveling around in interstellar and intergalactic and intersuperclusteral medias. Are you sure about that? Electron beams don't affect photons. Well, there's no change to how quantum foam starts happening thanks to the overwhelming nature of noise coming from the star we orbit, decreasing or increasing it. We don't know how much, but it doesn't. We're not getting into the real nature of what we're measuring being fucking shit, basically, at this point? Oh, I'm pretty sure we are, actually. See, that's the thing. That's the problem. See, we already know one of those issues in our own atmosphere in the Atacama Desert. We try and use lasers effectively to measure wind speed and the ultimately interference therein and the change of that frequency and the luminosity, right? I thought it was just for diffusion, right? I mean, correct for that diffusion noise. But it's like, hey, well, you know, we might be. How much does that electromagnetic field, how much does background radiation interfere with it? Actually, how much does the charge fields in the upper atmosphere increase the amount of luminosity or decrease it? Actually, you know what? Wait a second. How much could we, ultimately speaking, use that? We probably should do that. How much could we turn in this quantum thermodynamic phenomenon of a bunch of occlusions to neutrons that create an electron hole, but actually this would be a photon hole in a way, I suppose, that would allow for, you know, a change of total amounts of photons in a given area. Especially if they're moving like little, you know, balls through a bunch of bigger balls here. How much density over a given distance, and of course we know that that is moving, right? So it's like this creates its own pressure wave moving along with it. And it's actually right here versus where we're seeing it here, right? So it's like, all right, well, neutrons will move faster than light to a degree, depending on what's obviously there in the way. How much is really ultimately there? How much is being stopped? How much is being degraded? How much is being curved? How much is any of that? We don't know, right? Well, you need to know that to actually get that correctly done. You never did. That's a problem. You have to do that. We will! No, there's no will, mister. This needs to be done now. It's like a professor scolding a student at this point. Because you need to know that. That's a quantum physics thing, though. You need to know how much, ultimately speaking, over that distance, even though we have this estimate of this neutron. We have this estimate. None of that's relevant! Your estimates are not good enough here! You need to know! But we don't. We'll get to work on it! Jeez! Come on, man! But, like, what if we can't? You just don't want to do the work, you lazy sumbitch. That's what that is. You don't want to do the work, do you? That's a lot of work. Come on. Come on. No. Nope, we can't play that game. We can't do that. No more arguments. We got to do that work. If you're going to really argue for this is the total time of the universe lived right now, and these distances therefore are being actually done, and this total rate of movement is really there, you're gonna need to do this work. If you're gonna argue for this, you gotta get pedantic and semantic about it. You gotta get real up into the weeds with those fucking maths. You gotta get into how all of that influences over all of that given distance and time with all this volume of all this other movement that's also going on at that time. You've got to do it. You've got to figure out how all of those waves and all of those interferences and all of those wave fluctuations and all of that quantum and all of those mechanics and all of this is altering what it is you're seeing. Because when you hallucinate a bunch of mirages, that holograph really seems to be quite so real and certain, doesn't it? But it's not. It's not. And it sure looks like it's 2D. It could be! We don't know! It's not curving! Well, you know what? Let's not get into that one. Let's not get into the fact that the only way you'd ever fucking be able to do that is to go backwards relative to your velocity expansion away from each other. But okay. Which you'd have to measure all of this anyways to be able to even do that. But okay. Sure, it's flat. Let's just go with it's flat. Sure, it's flat. It's not. It's very unlikely to have been that way. We know that we're getting our measurements wrong. The astrophysicists know. They just don't want to argue with you because that's a fuck ton of work. So there's that. You try measuring with a probe going against the... Fuck you, bitch. Oh, fuck me. You want to say fuck me, huh? You don't have the money. Come on. Let's talk about this for real. Let's really talk about this. Since that probably got rid of enough people by that point. We're 15 minutes in. Let's talk about how the fact you really do need to know more than what that is. You need to know how much light wave interference near a coronal mass ejection is and how much it obviously changes things, let alone that amount of plasma, let alone all the rest of it. All of that has to be at least guesstimated based upon what we can see in our local galactic neighborhood, let alone our own solar system neighborhood. Those basics will get us a lot further, and we've got to do that, and we don't have it. We're arguing already about all of that. We try our best to say, hey, that is being accounted for. No, it's not. You don't know anything that's in there. We can't see it. No. You're saying you can't see it. You're choosing not to do the work to get to the point where you have a very, very high likelihood of knowing what it is doing. You're choosing not to do it. And that's a problem. Because it's like, no, do you know any astrophysicists? They would do this. I would believe they would have been doing it already if it was so easy. But in a reverse. We already do this. We already know. We already have it all done. This is everything that we're doing. They would never be like that. That's not a thing. They would have had all of this already. Shut up over there! Peace! And I disappear. The side-eye is real. Shut up over there. Don't you dare, you fucker. But that's a problem, right? It's like we get some of it. No. No. I don't want to hear some of it. Come on. We don't know. Oh, pish posh. You do know some of it. You just said that. Just. You know you can work to getting all the rest of that information. You gotta do it. There's a lot of physics phenomenon here. Oh no, we know that. Along with like light wave, acoustic resonance, movement, right? That's exciting it and thrusting it one way and also having it shine, and we already use CO2 lasers, so hey, that increases luminosity. Right, there's that one. You gotta remember that one. Did you include that one? Probably not. Because I don't know the density and how many times it's gonna do that. Oh, you don't know the density how many times. Did you guesstimate? No. Oh, so you just looked and said that was good enough. We're talking about denoising. No, we're also talking about increasing bitrate quality and resolution. You need to know that. Hey, my God, look at this slight tadpole-like fucking galaxy all the way back then. What if I could actually see this fucker? What if I could finally get that bitch? What if I could really tease out some detail? There's some density here, there's some depth here. You know what I mean? What if I could really get that going? Getting into GitHub like that one guy in the radio waves over here. Fucking denoise the whole thing. What if we can get into this finally for once? What if we can finally get into thermal and fluid dynamics in the quantum and astrophysics realm, and how ultimately that's clearly going to affect it? What if we can finally get into chromo and electrodynamics, which that's not really what that would be. Although, here's the thing. So, a occlusion here that starts off as a positive or negative that's constantly altering itself back and forth as it rotates, spin-wise, creating a current as it collapses, as a momenta value. As a thermodynamic equivalent of electrons go burr one direction and creates a z-pinch. Oh no! Yeah, positrons fired at a nucleus, which you've done before. That's a thermodynamics. But they're like, no, it's chromodynamics. It's a brand new color. The color is... No, you're not. You're not talking about anything with color. Not even a little. You're talking about electrodynamics in no way either. You're talking about thermodynamics. A hole, an electron hole, but it's really just a energy vacuum hole. Now, let's talk about photons as a whole. As there's only so much space here, right? Well, it's expanding. So, no. Clearly there's more space to where we're heading. Who said that? You're not allowed to do that. What? Dr. Michio Kaku! Hi, I'd like to use your predictive analysis skills. I only have string theory. No, you have a lot more than that. Shut up, bitch. Slap. You have way more than just string theory. Everybody just knows that you have string. Get the guy out of here. We're not going to do that again. Sorry, Dr. Michio Kaku. They're just trying to fuck with you, I guess. That's standard bullshit after a while, right? But, you know, string theory is rather interesting. As a dimensional construct, it happens to introduce more space as it moves. How much space is there? Well, because this is how you write your fucking two-dimensional bullshit. As it moves, which is a problem in your math. You get it? You have a fourth dimensional new introduction of a fifth dimensional space that you're refusing to acknowledge exists. I know your math. I know where you're wrong. I know how you're doing that incorrectly. Of course, we don't want to call it a fifth dimension. It's just third dimension that's over there. Oh, okay, but there's nothing over there. You can't see past that. You can't see that forward fourth dimensional direction. Remember that? Everything curves towards a past. Everything is a hallucination in your brain of past perceived information. Only live, real time. You don't have a future. Remember? You can't do that. You're only recording one single thing that is real time, and then you have to interpret it. So you've never seen forward. But that space exists. We obviously logically know it exists. Well, there's no aurora borealis in that Oort cloud. There's nothing there. There's no way. There's no way charged particles would affect this photon. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you really sure? Because it sounds like you're trying to dodge doing math work. Because it seems like you know that it's there and you don't want to say it's there because you didn't see it. Do you get it? Do you? I'd like to see if you get it yet. Because I've been saying the same thing at this point for a while, but actually I keep adding in new things that you have to account for. How many more things, since you're PhDs, do you know more than I do? You should, right? You got it. You got the PhD. How many quantum physicists and mechanic experts, as I like to call them, they're kind of cool, quantum mechanic experts. I got a tiny little wrench. I gotta smell my wrenches. I use fields for my wrenches. Oh wait, my photons. Can light ultimately be something that doesn't have quantum information? Or can quantum information outstrip the speed of light? Just because light is what we usually use for information to be gleaned and stored, it does not mean that in a field context of occlusions and, of course, vacuums, and then we got foam and pressure wave signals. What is the actual speed of sound for the space-time reality around us? Does anybody know what the quantum foam popping up is? Is that little sound waves that smash together and create little turbulences of virtual and quasi-particles, perhaps? What kind of positive momentum energy, or negative for that matter? Is it because it's spinning like this? Is that a momentum conservation? How many times does that have to happen before we go, wait a second, it elicited light, didn't it? Wait, what if there was like a binding of sorts, like a bosonic, to mention a type of mass, of friction, if you will, informationally, quantumly speaking, that has to propagate outwards from its initial relativistic point, relative to all local and non-local values. Because they're not real when they're local. Oh, yes, the pressure wave is not real. We don't allow for that to be real. Just fuck you. That's why. Fuck off. Are you sure? Looks pretty real. But if you slow it down, is it cold, the environment, when you slowed it down? That tends to condense things in a local environment around here with a big gravitational well that changes the noise energy and what seems to slot in when there's a hole to be filled. Is there other stuff in between interstellar, intergalactic, and intersupercluster that would try to fill in those gaps, to cause it to expand still? Can space slip in and tunnel, if you will? Is there a fourth or fifth dimensional space there? Are you simply moving through it, or does it fill in the gap as an energy? Oh no, quantum vacuum pressure! Oh yes, the result of rebound indirect wave that we happen to sense and see as a expansional pressure. How much does that affect photons? I mean, it would redshift them because they'd have to travel through it, right? Could we just use quantum vacuum pressure? Well, we can't measure it in between stars. How far does the gravitational well have to still be to affect that and start being reduced as a radiative pressure? Look at the arguments of the PhDs. This is how you look like. This is how you look like, you fucking dummies. Look at this. This is what you look like. Look at this. Well, it's not radiated pressure. It's not. It's beta particles. Is it a different particle soup? Are they virtual? What is this foam? Does it fizzle out? Are they bombarding things? Do they slot in to where the slight sub-Planck length in second minutes? If you know about how like scopes work, for what it's worth, when you fire a rifle, and so we do like a little turn thing, and then we use like a 12 o'clock, right? And so like it's really just gears, though, to be fair. But like that means slight little tiny amounts of movement, right? But it gives you a downrange of very, very large distance traveled, right? So how many of those within inside of our solar system here for the sun would ultimately start having holes filled as they fire off? We think it's infinite, but is it? How infinite can it be? Does it just make another particle of photon, maybe, perhaps? Is that our bell curve now? Is that what our uncertainty is? A energy introduced, copying to try and fill a gap? I mean, does gravity intrapedically slow down things? Make it colder? Make it a little more stable? Sort of looks like it. Doesn't introduce heat. Eventually heat goes bye-bye and it becomes a black dwarf, remember? But we don't see those. Well, they're black, dummy. Get them to reflect something. How about a laser aimed at something, huh? How about that? Does gravity ultimately introduce a stabilization of movement? No, but see, that's not what that is. That's momenta, the base energy, remember? It would sacrifice movement in all other ways to the center to stop movement. Occlusional, expansional. That's what it is, right? Expansional movement gets slowed down. Compression of space and time intrapedically is being done. Quantumly speaking, it's gravity. but that's an informational construct of a thermodynamic fluid dynamic system. It's an acoustic resonance inward bound pump in a 360-degree sphere of influence. It's almost like it's a field, man, of vibrational energy, dude. You gotta sense the universe's vibrations, brah. Because I love fucking with people. You know me. If you don't, you probably don't. But if you did, I do like fucking with people. It's a thing. I like doing that. But let's talk about how that's how a lot of you really don't like to sound to people that give you money. But I like fucking with those people. So, like, obviously, you know what I mean? Yeah. That's how it works. But it's like, no, we have to have a particle. The inward bound negative influence of space reduction. Gravitonly tunneled. Are you sure? Sounds like it was formed as a result of it traveling as an informational construct through the, what do we want to call it? Space-time, ether. Which one did you want to go with? I never really understood this particular one. Because they're all just fields and waves, bro. Like, genuinely, yeah. But there's got to be stuff there. Well, you know, they're just spinning and wrapped up on themselves, basically. You know what I mean? They're like, you know what I mean? And it's like, there's something over there. There's a field of influence. As I radiate outwards, I compress myself, and then I go, as there's less resistance this way and less resistance that way. And so I wiggle and jiggle and wiggle and jiggle and wiggle and jiggle, and I create chaos, right? So then I align myself, and I create gravity as I get intrapedically faster one direction, but then clump together as I cool off. Thermodynamics, momentum. Of course, what does that have to do with the light emissions that cool things down? I think you answered your own question. Just saying, dude. I'm just saying. You answered your own question. So, what about particles that would be able to sustain themselves this way throughout the space-time stuff? Oh, I'm sure it would probably be you answering that very same question the same way. But that the foam is just friction. No, I could never work that way, no. There's no way. I like to be cheeky. It's what it is. Anyways. Point is, obviously we know that that's a thing, but we have to ultimately model that and simulate that, and we have to get better and better programming, so statically fixed numbers like a Mad Lib and program land. So you just input the variables as a plus or minus with a 99th and 90th percentile as a bell curve here that you have to work with, basically. You know what I mean? And that's all that is, really. Honestly, they can call them margin of error all they fucking want, but that's not really what that is. All right, like these are for sure 99 percentile, most likely always like this, right? And then you have like the 90th, and then you get out from there, and then eventually you just get to like that's not even a thing, or at least we're pretty sure it's not. One day, causal set theory might be right, you know? Who knows? It all just suddenly, right? But hey, what if we were in a very large universe and we just accelerated into a more emptier spot, if you will? We can't prove that one. We can't disprove it either. A big flume, but a reverse in a way. It's kind of like a fart, actually, to be fair. Got farted into existence these days. Well, you know, but I'm here, so fuck you. I don't care. I'm not gonna fucking hate that. Screw you. Of course, we'd have to tell it. It's like, no. See, it's not quite the look. Okay, look. We have to call this as a rapid acceleration towards a given direction. With a frictional coefficient in between two membranic-like things. Perhaps in a space that is much less dense, obviously, and less pressured. As a result, moving, of course, possibly in a seemingly somewhat chaotic manner. We just couldn't measure what that was at the time. Without ultimately disturbing it and putting something there that makes it so that way we would be forcing it to align and be very certain in a particular manner, and thus would not represent real world values. Well, it's cold. And you put sensors near it. But I digress, of course. Let's move on to, wow, these planets near a star. Look at this lensing sort of effect of light here. There's no, like, I don't know, Jupiter perhaps, and Earth's electromagnetic field aligning with, perhaps some of these other planets, and then it kind of more increasing the luminosity and changing those wave frequencies. Dude, as we turtle surf with the whales. Along the vast pumps, I suppose, of less resistance, Bernoulli principle-like designs of neutrons and photons and magnetic fields snapping and moving and seemingly chaotic, rotating vortexes and fields of various alignments. As, of course, it's really just, electromagnetic static charges and repulse and attractive stuff like that, you know what I mean? It's all really rather the same after a while. They're all kind of talking about basically kind of similar stuff in a thermodynamic, fluid dynamic context. But, they didn't like that one for a while there. It requires a lot of calculations. I don't care. You've got to do it. Shut up. You need to do it. Stop arguing. You've got to do this. You have to do those things. Come on, you can model it. It's gonna be fine. Granted, there's higher densities and lower densities. Bernoulli's principle, oh no! They're moving so much quicker over here. They drag more light in. Space and time also happens to be, what now? Expanding? Well, there's that too. I was gonna go with something else. Dragging, in this instance, this would be like neutrons, neutrinos, particles, virtual particles, foam, etc. This elicits more light, so it drags in light as it then constructively interferes. So it produces a photon that goes along with it, albeit slightly behind, right? It creates a vacuum that then creates a constructive interference of another photon, because that's, of course, least resistance. It's already made, draft stone style, a hole for it to punch through. That's what it did. That's what it does. I added Dr. Becky about that one back in the day, but I called it a Lemke phasing principle and how neutrons do this whole thing. It's like over an hour long. I'm quite yelly about it, obviously, because there's always those dicks that want to argue about shit that doesn't even matter. I don't know how this works, and I can't even measure it myself, no matter how hard I try. You've got to give me all the things without me having to credit you. No, I don't. No, I don't. Figure it out yourself, bitch. I'm giving you ideas that are really good. You're a stupid cunt that needs to learn that. You need to figure it out. Shut up. That's how you argue. That's how regular people see you arguing. That's how we see you. You guys are stupid sometimes. Those people ruin people ever wanting to get into STEM fields. Those fuckers literally ruin your shot at progressing information. And you're turning into them. That's like my entire YouTube channel, going after douchefucks like that. That's it. They're gabagoos. Get rid of them. They're not necessary. But, you know, as much as I decided to go over some of my own stuff that I've come up with that solves a lot of your issues, even in this one for the whole expansion rates, constants, which are, of course, going to be different over different distances and what's going on in a three-dimensional, four-dimensional construct of, you know, things moving in a fluid, dynamic, thermodynamic manner, which, of course, alters the constant of expansion depending on where you look, which is why you keep getting different numbers. That's right, you get different numbers because of that. Behold, oh my God, you're seeing what I've already been saying is already happening. Do you get that yet? I don't think you get it. You proved my point. There is no constant expansion rate. That's right, big macro daddy motherfuckers are doing the same thing as your little tiny molecules. You little stupid cunts. Jesus. This fucking... I got a PhD. I don't care. Stop using that to fucking justify not thinking about things. You let yourself get fucking wrapped up in your ego instead of going, what am I missing? And what am I not doing the work on and trying to avoid? Those things. It's a thermodynamic, fluid dynamic system. Obviously, there are going to be greater amounts of density and less density, and that's going to change the rate of expansion in various areas. Always. And you already know that. Come on. You're trying to average something out that can't be averaged out. You can't do that. It doesn't work. You have to model the system properly. So do it.